As he said, yes, my name's Jeff Snyder. Who am I? I'm a composer and a performer, musician. I'm an improviser, so I play a lot of improvised music, experimental improvised music, sometimes around free jazz kind of genre. I'm also an instrument designer focusing on electronic instruments. That's a lot of the work that I'm going to show today. And I'm a sound artist doing installation art. So, as far as instrument design goes, I've got a few different goals that I'm aiming for. So, one of them is that I really want the instruments to be more expressive and satisfying to play. And this is a goal. So, electronic instruments traditionally, there's been at least 50 years of relatively popular electronic instruments existing. And for the most part, they're just a keyboard that you push the key and it says, yes, you push this key and how hard did you push it? And then it just waits for you to let go of the key and then it says, okay, the key let go. Kind of a piano style action. And the keyboard has been associated with a synthesizer in electronic music since 1960 something. And really, there's no reason that electronic music has to operate that way. It's just the way it happened. So I'm interested in changing that a bit, and there's other people in my field who are really interested in changing that. I'm also really interested in having a cool visual style to my instruments, so I care a lot about the aesthetics, and I care not just for the audience, but also for the performer, and having the feel and the look of the instrument feel really satisfying for the player. And I want all the instruments I build to have their own unique sound. So this is kind of different from the usual electronic instrument goal of trying to make it super able to just do anything. So you can think of a laptop as an electronic instrument, but really it could play iTunes files, or it could make synthesis sounds, or it could basically sound like anything, and you wouldn't know what to expect if I came up with a laptop and started typing on it, and it was supposed to be music. So I like the idea that the instruments kind of have their own defined sound, and I do that generally by limiting the range of sounds that they can make, which maybe sounds counterintuitive, like you wouldn't want to do that, but really I'm trying to avoid that kind of, any sound can come out of this instrument and make it feel more like this instrument sounds like this, the way a violin sounds like a violin, or a trombone sounds like a trombone. I'm also really interested in giving them acoustic resonators, so I want the instruments to, instead of just going to a sound system like in here, have them have their own kind of acoustic sound source, and I'll show a little bit what that means. That's a little bit of a more confusing concept. So here's a little background on that. There's a guy named David Tudor who was a composer and pianist who worked a lot with John Cage, and he did this piece in the 60s and 70s that inspired me a lot called Rainforest, where he took these random objects that he found. You can see like a oil drum and a metal hoop and stuff like that, and he stuck electromagnetic resonators on them, these kind of drivers that would shake them. And then he fed audio signals into the magnets to shake these objects so that the objects themselves resonated with the audio. And by doing that, he gets this, the tone color of what he sends into those objects is completely colored by the object itself and its own natural physical properties. And the sound comes from these different objects in different spaces, which I think is really exciting. Here's another little pic of him doing Rainforest. So I'm going to show some of my instruments here. This is the Manta. This is kind of my most successful instrument in some ways. It's the only thing that I've made in multiple quantities. So I've sold about 150 of these, and it's basically a touch sensing keyboard where all these little hexagon pads know how much surface area you're covering on them, and you can route that to, say, the volume, so it could be a keyboard where every note you can actually control exactly what's going on from the moment you touch it to the moment you let go. It knows all that information instead of, say, a normal piano keyboard where it just doesn't know what you're doing until you let go. So you could do vibrato on an electronic instrument, which is kind of interesting. So I mentioned the idea of doing these acoustic resonators, right? Trying to give the instruments their own specific sounds. This is a resonator that I built for the Manta. So as you saw, the Manta is kind of this small, it's about the size of a laptop. It's the small touch controller that fits in a laptop case. But I had the idea that I wanted to have that instrument also have its own defined tone color. And not everybody who buys a Manta wants this thing. In fact, probably nobody does, except for me. But I built one of these for my own music so that I could write pieces for this instrument, and it could come directly out of this resonator that would have its own defined sound. And you can see this one I call the Resophonic Manta resonator. There's this little aluminum cone. Here's a close-up of it. Somebody who's familiar, if you've ever seen a bluegrass band and seen somebody playing the dobro guitar, this is where that technology comes from. It's like a 1930s technology for amplifying a guitar and making it louder before electronic amplification became possible, or at least before it became popular. So I took that Resophonic guitar aluminum cone design, and then I've got my magnetic driver underneath this wood circle here, shaking that metal cone, which is now connected to a piece of spruce that's on a big box resonator, so it sort of acts like an acoustic instrument. But the sound that's coming into it is completely electronic. So it's like you play the Manta, this keyboard, it makes sound, and then that sound goes into this resonator, which the Manta's sitting on top of. So the performer feels like their sound is coming from themselves rather than a speaker system. So here's another one of my instruments. I'll play a little bit of music in a second, don't worry. So you'll know how they sound. This one is called the treble contravielle, and it's another version of the same kind of idea, except in this one I'm combining the acoustic resonator with the electronic music controller. So I've got these buttons over here. You can think of those as frets on a fretboard and different strings. So there's 4 strings that each have about 12 frets each. And then on the right hand, you've got these little, yeah, I can't do my little mouse thing, but you've got these trigger strings, where you can actually touch the strings to change volume of the different virtual strings that you're touching with your left hand. But then the cool thing is, there's a big magnet driver hiding inside the thing and screwed onto the front that shakes it with your audio. So whenever you're playing, the sound actually comes out of the instrument, and that decorative looking F-hole up there, kind of violin-like, is actually functional because air needs to escape the instrument in order for it to make sound. And why I did that is, partially so the performer has their own control of their own sound and feels the sound coming from the instrument and vibrates as they play it. I think it feels really satisfying. And also because that really colors the sound. So this thing, you can put a very pure tone into it and it'll come out sort of sounding like it's coming out of an object that's this size and this shape, And I actually built 2 of them, which are identical except for the fact that this one's a lot bigger, and they sound completely different simply because of the resonator body. You could close your eyes and know which one's playing if they're both playing at once, which is one of my goals. So here I'm going to show a little example of some music that I wrote for the group of instruments that I built. This one's performed by a group called Sideband that I play in. I teach electronic music over at Princeton University, so this group is associated with Princeton. It's a lot of grad students and faculty members over there. And all the instruments in it are designed by me, and it's a little piece I wrote. So here's a picture of the stage setup. So you've got some little treble contravielle, the tenor contravielle, the bass manta and the resophonic manta, and then in the back row I've got these little button box things, and I'm on the left playing a timpani, electronically controlled timpani, and there's somebody else on the right doing the same. All right, so I'm gonna pop out into the video here. This will just be a short excerpt, like a minute long. So there's a little excerpt. Cool. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what these things sound like and look like in performance. I've got other applications for the instruments too. This is my little press photo for my electro-country band, which is called Owen Lake and the Tragic Loves. Owen Lake is my alter ego, country western alter ego. And here's a little picture of me playing the contrabass as Owen Lake. Here, let's see if I can play this one. I'll show you a little bit of what this sounds like.
Well, it's true that we just can't live together.
For your heart and my heart don't agree.
So let's celebrate our parting with a party. Let's get together before we go our separate ways. Let's get together just one time, once again, to cover up the beginning of the end. And though we both have agreed.
All right. So. If you want to hear more of that, the first album's up on iTunes. I'm working on the second album. Another instrument that I built here, I want to show, this is the last thing I'm going to show. It's an instrument that I built primarily for improvisational purposes, where a lot of the other instruments I wrote to compose music for and then have other people play. This one I wrote as kind of my dream instrument to improvise with. So it's what I've been playing for the last year and a half, actually last 2 years about now. It was also kind of built for another person too. There's somebody who asked me to build them a keyboard, and I said, hey, I've got an idea for a keyboard. If you give me enough money, I'll build two and then I'll keep one. So that's what I did. And I'll show you a little bit how this guy works. So this is sort of, is that loud enough out there? Can you hear it? Okay, great. So first I'll demonstrate a little bit. I'll hold up, here's a kind of close-up picture here. And the system is, there's a controller keyboard down here that I've built that has the touch-sensitive keys, much like the Manta has those touch sensors, except that it's laid out more like a traditional keyboard where there's black keys and white keys, although they're inverted colors. And then each key has a little knob above, or two knobs above it, so you can kind of assign the keys to be whatever you want. So you wouldn't necessarily have to have an E flat be an E flat. You could just change it to be something else and whatever note you want. And then it's also got all these kind of crazy sequencer functions, which I'll demonstrate. But the coolest thing about it, for me, and the main reason I built it, is so that I could apply that kind of continuous control over pitches onto a piano keyboard layout. So as you can see, right now I have the amount of surface area that I'm touching on the key controls the resonance of this filter to give, it kind of feels like you're shaping your mouth in a different vowel sound here. So as I go more surface area, I can open up the filter and close it back down. So having that ability was really interesting to me, and to kind of be able to really be in the moment expressive. I'll hold it up a little bit, just set down the mic for a second so that you can see as much as you can. Here's the So here's the instrument. I was just simply touching one of these keys. Oops. Oh, now I've broken something. Now the instrument's broken forever. All right, let's see. That is interesting. I don't know exactly what I did. Oh, I pulled I yanked a cable in. drop my pitch down. That's what I did. But there we go. So anyway, right now this thing is controlling a custom-built analog synthesizer that I made. So this is sort of like 1970s technology right here that I'm just copying because I find it really, really handy and expressive. There's been a renaissance of this kind of stuff lately. So if you're interested in building analog synthesizers, you can basically go online, and tons of people have these synthesizer DIY websites. I'll show a little bit more of this. This is the circuit board for the keyboard, just if you want to go ooh at the pictures. This is the circuit design for the panel control, and this is the circuit design for the brain that runs the whole thing. So it's actually, even though it's controlling an analog synthesizer, it's actually a digital device where it has analog sensing input and then analog output. So I'll show you a little bit of what else makes this really cool. So I might have to set the mic up so that I can talk into it and play at the same time. Let's see if this is possible. Oh yes, it works. Okay, so now I'll show you, right now I have it routed so that the keys are in this kind of normal piano keyboard layout, so I can play that kind of thing. But then what's kind of cool about this is that the pitches don't actually, well, for now I'm actually going to take off the filter cutoff thing. And I'm going to make it so that instead of being controlled by which key you're playing, the pitch is now controlled by, it could, for instance, also be controlled by key pressure in the same way that the filter was. Or it could be controlled by one of the knobs above the keys. So I can make it so that any key could be any pitch that I wanted it to be. Here, I'm gonna... So I can just kind of place any note I want anywhere. And that's kind of cool. What it really gives me is the ability, so now that each of these keys has their own sort of set of knobs, I can also make it a sequencer. So I went ahead and did that on this circuit. So I'll show a little bit of that. Basically, you could consider these keys, they're now all these different sequencer steps. And I can make it step through them. Let's see. Mostly it doesn't make any sense, but it's pretty fun. And then you've got this keyboard which you can now use to control how the sequencer steps. So right now I'm limiting it to those steps. Or you can say, I only want to step on these ones and not the others. Or you can do the same thing, but with a normal piano keyboard kind of layout, which gives you these kind of Philip Glass arpeggiations. Ooh. So there's my presentation.